yeah, it's just really, really great what you guys are doing. And of course, once that food is produced, it has to get to market. And that's certainly what our next speaker has been really focusing on over the last decade or so in Hawaii. Soleil Azizi was a key figure out at Kahumana Organic Farms, but has really kind of grown beyond that to lead the charge on growing Hawaii's food hubs. So he has the founder and chair, I would say, of the Hawaii Food Hub Hui, who I've had the pleasure of sitting on that with him and playing a supporting role over the last few years. And really thinking about how do our small scale producers come together to leverage collaborative networks in order to access markets, build up capacity, access infrastructure, all of those challenges that a lot of our small farmers face. So thank you for joining us, Soleil, and it's all yours.
Thank you, Noah. Good to be here. Can everybody hear me okay? All right, thumbs up. Let's see here. Yeah, great to be in the room with so many of the food systems leaders. So like Noah shared, my name is Soleil Azizi. I'm the founder of the Hawaii Food Hub Hui, which is a project that's incubated by the Hawaii Good Food Alliance. And before starting the Hui, like Noah shared, I was part of the team that launched and operated for about 5 years, the Kahumana Food Hub in Waianae. In 2019, I completed my dissertation on community-led policies to promote food hubs, local farmers, and to strengthen Hawaii's local food system in urban planning at UH Manoa. So the Hui concept emerged after years of learning of the operation at Kahumana and finding other food hubs in Hawaii that had shared concerns and shared values and needed collective advocacy. So our Hui is a practitioner-led initiative of 14 food hubs that's currently supporting more than 1,400 farmers in Hawaii and around 200 employees, partnering to strengthen Hawaii's food system value chain. We believe that our collective power of the Hui can be harnessed to solve systems level problems that individual food hubs can't solve on their own. I've come to think that the biggest problem with our food security in Hawaii is not that we import 90% of the food we eat. I think that's a consequence of the problem. And the real problem is really that we don't listen to our communities and provide for what they need. So when I began working with the food hubs, I spent a lot of time engaged in deep listening and learning from the food hub owners and the many farmers that they serve. And when I listened to the farmers, many of them were sharing that they have an abundance of produce and need food hubs to address market access. And the food hubs would often say that they could serve more of the demand for locally grown food that has gone unmet for decades if more resources were available for them to expand processing and distribution services. So if you're unfamiliar with what food hubs are, food hubs aggregate produce from local farmers by storage, processing, and distribution of locally grown foods. Hubs are community-led organizations that connect the dots systematically from production to consumption every step of the way. And they reach out to all types of markets, everything from direct to consumer to all types of wholesale markets like restaurants and stores and institutions. So during my time at Kahumana, I met Bula. He's a farmer in Waianae that grows, has an aquaponics farm on less than 5 acres at the ag park. And like many other farmers, he doesn't really have time to go to the farmer's market. So he tried to go to the nearby grocery store to sell his lettuce. And he called me one day and he said, when I went to the store to sell my lettuce, they just laughed at me. And so small farmers like Bula are quite often excluded from the marketplace. They're an inconvenience to our current food system, But ironically, they are the norm and represent over 90% of our 7,300 farmers. To me, they're the foundation of our sustainable agriculture. And on the retail side, without a food hub, grocery stores and other buyers would have to reach out to about 40 to 50 producers every week just to keep a steady supply of their food. And because they don't really have time for that, and we all know how hard it is to find a reliable workforce these days, they end up contracting with food distributors who also don't have time to work with the small farmers. And so they end up filling the shelves with imported foods. And so instead of importing foods, food hubs distribute exclusively locally grown food to a full range of wholesale markets. And to increase the demand for local food, food hubs also develop minimally processed value-added products, like the Ulu Cooperative, for example, and allow for growth of local food manufacturers in turn, like Pico Provisions, who does all Hawaiian baby food. Without food hubs, farmers like Bula could not necessarily increase his production to serve larger customers like schools and hospitals, and local food would not really be able to scale and be stuck as a specialty product, only serving high-end tourism markets and at the farmers market. And I think that's why food hubs are so important, because they scale the system and allow for more customers and more farmers to be involved. And like Daniela mentioned, during the pandemic, many people lost their jobs. Food insecurity in Hawaii increased by 50%, and many farmers faced closures because the stores and restaurants were shutting down. The imported food supply was seriously damaged by panic buying, hoarding, and many families were forced to line up for the first time to get their food. And this was something that all states were facing at the same time. So we couldn't receive help from other places because they were facing the same disaster. And so during this time, COVID transformed the food hubs to expand from serving their own island and their own communities to forming a connected inter-island supply chain. And our nonprofit food hubs, which is about half of our group, specialized in food access and distribution, and they partner with our for-profit food hubs that excelled at aggregation and storage. And during this time, I feel like local food transformed from a specialty to a necessity that reached all people's homes. And by now, each of you have likely benefited from a food hub, either directly or indirectly. So efficient local food hubs connected to diverse markets are helping to solve market access for farmers like Bula by building trust in the marketplace and increasing production. For every dollar that's spent on produce by consumers, hubs return about 70 cents to farmers, compared to the 10 cents that farmers earn in the industrial food system. Not only do farmers earn about 10 cents or a fraction of the dollar that people spend in the store in the industrial food system, but it's usually only large-scale farmers that are invited to that supply chain. So food hubs allow all farmers to be included in the food system. And as more hubs become available and expand their reach, beginning and experienced farmers are preferring to work with the food hubs compared to the conventional model. And so throughout my time of working with the food hubs, I see three different trends and developments of the food hubs. And so the early adopters of food hubs like Adaptations, Oahu Fresh, and FarmLink, many of them actually started as farmers or supporting small local farmers and found that there was a significant challenge to market produce, and they created a food hub to specialize on marketing for small farmers. A second wave of food hubs were created by organizations that were out to solve food access problems and found that importing food to solve food access only furthered the problem of importing more food, and that it was better to go to farmers locally and support local food and to get fresh and nutritious food. And that became one of the reasons why they started food hubs. And the third wave is during COVID, when several new food hubs were formed out of both of those types of necessities, both from the farmer side and consumer side. So the Food Hub Hui is addressing several of the challenges that food hubs have. And so we solve for the infrastructural needs by fundraising to increase the pool of resources available to all the food hubs. Quite often, food hubs can get into unintentional competition over the funding that's out there, over the consumers that are out there, and over the farmers that are out there. And so the Hui is promoting a culture of collaboration and cooperation among the food hubs, so we form one local food system and not a bunch of them or multiple local food systems. So we grow and expand the collaborations between food hubs and larger wholesale markets like schools and hospitals. And we build relationship, advocacy, and a community of practitioners among funders, individual food hubs, and farmers. So this is my last slide, and thank you for letting me talk today. We often think that Hawaii is unique in our vulnerability and dependence on outside resources. But I think the truth is that localities around the world are facing very similar food systems challenges and lacking that missing link in the middle between their small local farmers and consumers. What makes us unique in Hawaii is that we have responded to the challenge of supporting our food hubs and small farmers by building a stronger local food systems. Other places are learning from our efforts to transform our food system from one that is relying on imported external resources to one that improves food security, relies on local resources, and is inclusive of local and family farmers. So because so many of you get it, we are becoming a model for sustainable agriculture. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Saleh. Is that the pitch you gave our senators? Was a very, very well organized and cohesive sharing of what your work is doing, Saleh. And so really thank you for coming and presenting that. I think, I'm a huge believer in the hubs and I think the work all doing both individually and again now as a larger network, a Hui of Huis, I think is just really, really awesome. And in your talk, oh, of course. I was going to say, and in your talk, I really appreciated, right, how you highlight individuals, and use that to really, tell the story from that perspective, right, of the individual farmer. And that's also what I think of in